The Forbidden Word. A Tale of Bane. Wednesday night descended upon Willow Creek like a suffocating veil, muffling even the last sounds of sparrows and children playing on the dirt road. The year was 1948, and the Tennessee summer heat seemed to offer no respite, even when the sun hid away. The freshly laid asphalt still exuded its pungent odor, mingling with the aroma of fresh coffee and warm bread escaping from the humble homes of the working-class neighborhood. My father and my Uncle Thomas, young and full of hope, had landed their first jobs at the Willow Creek Asphalt Company. The work was grueling, spreading tons of incandescent asphalt with shovels and iron rollers, all by sheer arm strength under a merciless sun. There were no modern machines, no shade for rest, just sweat, calluses, and the pride of bringing sustenance home. They shared a small rented house on the outskirts of town with their younger sister, Dolly, a strong-willed girl with dreams bigger than the village allowed. On that Wednesday, around 5:30 in the afternoon, Thomas left work, exhausted, but determined to secure a decent dinner. He stopped at Mr. Henderson's grocery store, bought eggs, freshly ground coffee, and a still warm loaf of homemade bread. He arrived home and gently asked Dolly to fry the eggs and prepare the coffee while he took a quick shower to wash off the black asphalt dust. Dolly, in a hurry, refused the request. She said she was late for an appointment and rushed out, shopping bags in hand, leaving the ingredients on the kitchen table. Thomas, already tired, felt his blood boil at his sister's disregard. The anger, mixed with exhaustion, became an unbearable weight. He walked to the split kitchen door, common in country homes, with the top half open for ventilation, and with an abrupt gesture, slammed it shut completely. The dry thud of the wood echoed through the darkened house. It was then that, seized by an impulse of fury, Thomas uttered the phrase that would change his life. "Makes you not want to bring any money home anymore. Just leave it all to Bane." Almost immediately, all the kerosene lamp flames extinguished, plunging the house into a darkness so dense it seemed material. The silence was absolute, oppressive. Thomas felt the air suddenly grow cold, a chill that didn't match the summer heat. For a few seconds, he stood motionless, trying to understand if it was real or just a product of his exhaustion. Then, out of nowhere, the lamp flames reignited with a soft click, as if an invisible hand had passed over each one. The air remained icy, and Thomas felt a shiver crawl up his spine. Before he could compose himself, he heard knocking at the door. It was slow, heavy knocking, reverberating through the wood as if made by ancient tree knots. With his heart pounding, Thomas, still consumed by anger, but now dominated by fear, went to the door. Instead of opening the top half, as would be logical to see who was there, he opened the bottom half. What he saw were large, thin feet and slender legs covered in stained, aged skin. The smell that rose was of damp earth and old mold. Trembling, Thomas opened the top half of the door. Before him stood a terrifying old woman. Long, disheveled hair so white it looked dirty, a grayish, patched and tattered dress hanging from a thin, stooped body, a face deeply furrowed with wrinkles, bulging, fixed eyes, and only one yellowish, protruding tooth in her mouth. On her head, a bundle of dirty clothes. The silence between them was suffocating until Thomas, his voice trembling, asked, "What do you want?" The answer came like a cold knife. "Well, Thomas, didn't you call me? I'm here." In that instant, Thomas knew, with a certainty that only absolute terror can bring, that he had conjured something that should never be called. The forbidden word, spoken in fury, had opened a door that could not be easily closed, and Bane itself was there, in flesh and bone, waiting to enter. In a desperate impulse, Thomas slammed both parts of the door shut, locked everything he could, and screamed, "Help me, our Lord Jesus Christ! Deliver me in this hour!"
Fear paralyzed him. He He threw himself into the hammock in the corner of the room, feeling small, helpless, and remained there, motionless, trembling so hard he wet himself from pure terror. He couldn't speak, couldn't move. Only time passed, dragging on, until around 10 at night, my father arrived home from work and found his brother pale, mute, a human wreck, marked forever by that night. The next morning, the Willow Creek house seemed to have returned to normal. The sun shone brightly, birds sang, and the smell of fresh coffee wafted through the kitchen. But Thomas was never the same. His eyes, once lively and full of plans, now always seemed distant, as if seeing something no one else could. Dolly, returning home, was puzzled by her brother's silence. She tried to pry an explanation from him, but Thomas just shook his head, avoiding his sister's gaze. My father, worried, insisted he eat something, but Thomas refused all food, saying it tasted strange, as if everything had been touched by something impure. In the days that followed, Thomas began to avoid leaving the house at dusk. Each time the sun began to set, he closed the doors and windows, locking everything with an almost ritualistic haste. Neighbors started commenting on his change. The lively, hard-working young man had become a quiet, reclusive man who avoided any conversation about that night. News of the incident spread quickly among relatives. Their grandmother, a woman of unshakable faith, was called to pray in the house. She brought with her an old rosary, holy water, and a 7-day candle. As she prayed, Thomas remained seated in silence, his eyes fixed on the floor, as if fearing that any word could bring back the malignant presence of that night. During the prayer, the candle flame flickered violently, even with no wind. The grandmother, sensing the sign, intensified her prayers, asking for protection and mercy. When she finished, she told everyone that they should never utter the word Bane in a curse, because certain words have the power to invoke what they name. The house routine changed. Dolly, once so independent, began to help more with chores, perhaps out of guilt or fear. My father, always pragmatic, tried to rationalize what happened, saying it was nothing but exhaustion and an overactive imagination. But at night, when everyone went to bed, it was possible to hear Thomas praying softly, asking for forgiveness for having opened the door to what he didn't understand. Time passed, but the mark of that night never faded. Thomas, even without ever speaking about it again, carried the weight of what he saw in his gaze. And from time to time, when the night fell especially dark and the wind blew strangely, he would lock the door more tightly, as if fearing the visitor would return to collect what was owed.
Years went by, but the story of the forbidden word became a silent warning among family members. Whenever someone got annoyed or cursed, Thomas would give a stern look, reminding everyone of the danger of invoking forces they didn't comprehend. In Willow Creek, ghost stories were not uncommon. There were reports of apparitions in the cemetery, strange lights in the cotton fields, and figures crossing roads at night. But nothing compared to the terror that spread after Thomas's account. The old woman of Bane became a local ghost, an entity feared by adults and children. Children, especially, grew to fear the night. Parents used the story to discipline their little ones. Be careful what you say, or Bane might knock on your door. The fear was real, palpable. No one dared to defy the warning. Thomas, in turn, became a kind of silent guardian. He never married, never left the family home. He dedicated his life to caring for his nephews and nieces, teaching them to respect the power of words and never to mock what they didn't understand. He always said, "There are things in this world that cannot be explained, and there are words that should not be spoken." Over time, the story gained more details. Some said the old woman still hunted the town, appearing to those who dared to utter the forbidden word. Others swore they had seen her bulging eyes peering through window cracks on stormy nights. The house, once joyful and full of life, became quieter. Nights were spent around the table, everyone together, praying before bed. The fear of Bane hung in the air, a constant reminder of the price of playing with the unknown. As the years passed, Thomas aged, but never lost his alert demeanor. Even in old age, he maintained the habit of closing doors and windows at dusk, as if expecting the old woman to return at any moment. His nephews and nieces grew up hearing his stories, learning to respect not only the supernatural, but also the power of their own actions and words. The town of Willow Creek changed. Progress brought electricity, paved roads, new families. But for the older folks, the memory of the night Bane knocked on Thomas's door never faded. It was like a shadow stretching across time, a secret whispered from generation to generation. Dolly, now an adult, married and moved to another city, but whenever she visited her brother, she made sure to help him close up the house at nightfall. She never argued with Thomas again, nor dared to challenge his superstitions. Respect, born of fear, became part of the family routine.
My father, in turn, became the new head of the household. He inherited from his brother a meticulous attention to detail, a caution with words. He always taught his children that there are things that cannot be explained, and that respect for the unknown is a form of wisdom. And so, the forbidden word became taboo. No one uttered it, not in jest, not in moments of anger. It was as if the very sound of the word had the power to open doors that should remain closed. As the decades advanced, Thomas became a legendary figure in Willow Creek. The neighborhood children, now adults, still remembered the stories told by the fireplace, the nights when the wind seemed to carry the whisper of the old woman of Bane. The house, now old and weathered by time, was meticulously maintained by Thomas. He took care of every detail, as if every object had the power to protect against evil. The crucifixes hanging on the doors, the sprigs of rue behind the windows, the candles always ready to be lit in case of a blackout, all part of a silent ritual of protection. Even on the calmest days, Thomas never fully relaxed. For every birthday, every Christmas, he made sure to gather the family and reiterate the importance of respecting the unseen. "You don't play with what you don't understand," he would say, his voice already hoarse with age. His nephews and nieces, now adults, came to understand that Thomas's fear was not just superstition, but wisdom born of experience. They learned to value silence, caution, and respect for forces that escape human comprehension. And so, the forbidden word remained buried in the past, a closely guarded secret, passed down only as a warning, never as a challenge. When Thomas passed away in January 1994, at 79 years old, the entire town felt his absence. The wake was simple, but filled with emotion. Family, neighbors, and friends came to pay their last respects to the man who for decades had been a pillar of protection and wisdom. During the ceremony, many recalled the fateful night that changed Thomas's life. Some cried, others simply bowed their heads in respect. The old house, now silent, seemed to hold within its walls the echo of the prayers, fears, and warnings Thomas had left throughout his life. After the burial, the family gathered in the living room, as they had so many times in the past. The silence was heavy, but also comforting. It was as if Thomas's presence was still there, watching over everyone, protecting against what cannot be seen or named. The nephews and nieces, now responsible for the house, decided to maintain their uncle's rituals. They continued to close the doors at dusk, avoid cursing words, and pray before bed. Respect for the past became part of the present, a silent but powerful legacy. As the years passed, the story of the forbidden word transformed into a legend. New generations heard the account with a mix of disbelief and fascination. Some thought it was an exaggeration. Others felt a chill at the thought that it might all be true. Thomas's house became a point of reference for those seeking advice or protection. Neighbors knocked on the door asking for blessings, prayers, or just a little comfort on stormy nights. The elders said that as long as the house stood, the old woman of Bane would never return to Willow Creek. But from time to time, reports of strange occurrences surfaced, lights flickering without reason, doors closing on their own, shadows seemingly moving on the walls. Whenever this happened, someone remembered Thomas's story, and the warning was renewed. Be careful what you say. Words have power. The legend of the forbidden word became part of local folklore, taught in schools, told around campfires, passed from parents to children. It was a constant reminder that the unknown must be respected, and that there are forces that should not be provoked. On a particularly dark night, many years after Thomas's death, a curious and skeptical young family member decided to challenge the elders' warning. He gathered some friends in the old house and, amidst laughter and taunts, loudly pronounced the forbidden word, mocking the elders' fear. What happened next was enough to silence any skepticism. The house lights suddenly went out, plunging everyone into absolute darkness. The air grew cold, and a deathly silence filled the room. One of the friends, trying to calm the others, lit a lighter, and for a brief instant swore he saw a pair of bulging eyes reflected in the window.
Panic set in, screams, commotion, slamming doors. When they finally managed to get out of the house, they swore never to mess with the unknown again. The young man, once so self-assured, began to avoid the forbidden word, convinced that certain things should not be challenged. The story spread quickly, further reinforcing the legend of the forbidden word. The house, now empty, became a symbol of the respect one should have for the unseen, and the old woman of Bane, a silent presence, always lurking, waiting for anyone who dares to defy the unknown. As the decades passed, the town of Willow Creek changed, but the legend of the forbidden word remained. New residents arrived, attracted by progress, but were soon introduced to Thomas's story and the warning that traversed generations. The house, now considered a town heritage site, was transformed into a small museum. Thomas's personal belongings, old photos, crucifixes, and candles were part of the exhibition. Local guides told the story to visitors, always with the recommendation to respect the silence and avoid playing with the supernatural. The more sensitive ones claimed to feel a strange presence upon entering the house, a cold that didn't come from the air conditioning, but from something deeper. Some visitors reported hearing whispers, feeling light touches on their shoulders, or seeing shadows moving in the corners of their eyes. The forbidden word was never spoken aloud inside the museum. The guides, even the most skeptical ones, respected the tradition, preferring not to risk it. After all, as Thomas used to say, there are things in this world that cannot be explained, and there are words that should not be spoken. Today, the story of Thomas and the forbidden word is known throughout Tennessee and even beyond. It has become the subject of books, documentaries, and plays. But for the family, it's more than a legend. It's a living reminder of the power of words and respect for the unknown. The house still stands, silent and imposing, guarding within its walls the echo of a night when fear became real. Visitors continue to arrive, drawn by curiosity, but leave with a new respect for the invisible.
And as long as there is someone willing to listen, the story will be told. The story of a man who, in a moment of anger, uttered the forbidden word and opened the doors to something that should not have been called. An eternal warning never to play with what you don't understand, and that certain words should remain forever unsaid.